Browns fans, week 1 is officially upon us, and we are very excited here at the Dog Check Podcast to be back with another episode as the regular season gets rolling. Eric Metcalf back alongside. We, of course, are part of the Believe network of podcasts and also air weekly on Bally Sports Cleveland. Eric, it's been a little bit, man. It's been a minute. I'm glad we get a chance to catch up here right before this starts. First, though, I want to get this out of the way early. How was Paris? Because you had a chance to go over there and experience the Olympics and all that. It looked like it was phenomenal. Great scene for all the events. Just what was it like taking that in and being part of that a couple weeks ago?
It was great. I mean, it was my third Olympics, but I had never been to Paris. I've only been south of France. And so to go to the Olympics and be in Paris with, like you said, all the events, all the different people, good food, good cigars, good whiskey. you can't help but not like it. You know what I mean? And that's why at this point, I'm still not really in football mode. Week 1 is upon us.
It's still coming down a little bit, yeah.
Still coming down. And even though my school, Texas, played this past week, it wasn't a real game. So I still didn't have to get in football mode. So it's still taking me some time this year.
I honestly, though, I think for me, I was just on vacation this past week. There's been a lot going on. I'm barely in football mode, and I've kind of been in the middle of it all. But I can imagine like experiencing something like that had to be awesome, and it probably does kind of delay your willingness to get ready for football season because you're still kind of reminiscing on everything. But we're happy to be back, and we know it's obviously an exciting time with football season finally upon us, and the Browns kicking things off with the Cowboys on Sunday at 4:25 start. We know Tom Brady's going to be on hand. It's a big game. I guess from like a bird's eye view of that matchup specifically, we know it's a big one because it's Dallas and all that, but have we maybe overhyped? Because I think a lot of people are going to go into this game picking Dallas just because it's Dallas and they see that the aura that is. And, you know, ESPN, it's going to be the lead topic on First Take with Stephen A. Smith is always the Cowboys.
Right.
But I actually think the Browns, I think this beginning portion of the schedule actually sets up pretty well for them, Eric, because you get the Cowboys, and that's probably your tough game in the first 5 games you play. But it's week 1, and I kind of feel like week 1 becomes an extension of the preseason these days in a way because a lot of these guys didn't take reps and all this different stuff. Teams are still kind of figuring out who they are, what they do well. So what's your outlook just on this matchup with Dallas and the challenges they present, but also how Cleveland obviously I think has a pretty good chance to win this game?
I feel good about it. However, let's start from the beginning. When we're talking about the Cowboys, they're winning the Super Bowl every year. You let their fan base tell it. They're winning the Super Bowl every single year. So that's one thing we got to work against, right? So we're playing against the favorite Super Bowl champs in Dallas. But I look at this and I think when we're looking at man for man on each team, I think the Browns are the better team at each and every position. I mean, I think that's just how it balances out well for the Browns. The Browns were a very good team last year, just had some bad blows hit them, and still were able to make the playoffs and do well. And so I feel this is a better team this year. They were able to keep everybody together for the most part. And with that in mind, even though they didn't play in preseason, I think they were still able to gel because they know who they are. They know the coaches know who they have in the locker room, what schemes they can run, whether it be offense or defense. And I think they'll be ready to play when the Cowboys show up.
Well, speaking of not playing in the preseason, we know there was a lot talked about with Deshaun Watson and the fact that he didn't take any reps during the preseason. He obviously had the joint practices where he got some reps in, and it wasn't always pretty during those 2 days. It was, I think there's been some offensive line issues just throughout camp that led to some of that. But he did take at least those reps. But I think that's kind of allowed fans to still have this heavy anticipation of, well, what's he going to look like, and maybe some nervousness about what he's going to look like. What are you expecting to see from Deshaun Watson this year? Given another year where he only played 6 games, he had the shoulder injury. He's obviously coming back from that, and he's ready to go, and he's been cleared for everything. But another year removed from that 2020 season that we all look back and say, well, that guy was a top 5 quarterback in football. What is your expectation for him this season?
I expect Deshaun to go out there and just be Deshaun Watson. And that doesn't necessarily mean be the guy that he was in 2020 when he was throwing for 4,000 yards in Houston. I don't think the Browns need that. I think they need somebody who's steady, can go out there and make plays, occasionally win games if they have to. But I think it's gotten to the point where people were thinking about the contract and what have you and everything. And that's why they were like expecting so much from him. When that's not what the Browns needed. They needed somebody who's going to take care of the ball and play winning football. When it's all said and done, this is a team that should be running the football. I mean, now we have playmakers all over, so it might not be that way because we have all these receivers, a good tight end and everything. And, of course, Nick Chubb has been hurt. But I think we just need him to go play winning football, win games. You know, I don't expect him to go out there and throw for 300 yards every week like Flacco did when he was out there. But I don't expect him to go out there and throw the ball to the other team either, right? I just need him to be able to make plays and win. If you think about the time that Deshaun has been here, I think people don't realize that he's 8-4. You say a quarterback played 12 games when they were 8-4 as a starting quarterback. I think anybody would be happy with that. It might not look pretty, but the bottom line is wins. And every time he wins two, he might lose one, but he's going to win two. And so I feel good about that.
Yeah, I do think early on in the season too, like that's kind of just the name of the game, right? It's survive and advance until your offense really sort of gets in gear. And I'm also anticipating too, along those lines, that there's going to be some growing pains, both for Deshaun, but for the offense as a whole, because it's not a completely new scheme, but you get Ken Dorsey's input on this thing. There's some different things they're trying to do. Deshaun's doing some different things. The hope is that he's more comfortable in this offense. But I do think because of that, we're going to see this group kind of get off to a slow start. And if he can just kind of manage the game in a way where they come out victorious, kind of like they did in week 1 last year against the Bengals, I think Browns fans will take that for these first couple of weeks just to kind of get them off and running before they really start rolling on all cylinders later in the season.
Right. And that's why I like that Ken Dorsey is there, because he's had dual threat quarterbacks. He's had Cam Newton. He's been with Josh Allen. And really and truly, these were guys that people say weren't really guys who could throw the football. And so I'm hoping that he has a little influence on Deshaun as well as Stefanski in the play calling, which makes it in turn easier for Deshaun and how he directs this offense.
Along the lines of expectations, it's interesting because last year they made the team makes the playoffs, given everything they went through injury wise, and especially at the quarterback position. And now I think like fans are kind of going into this year and they're like, well, hey, if we can do that again, if we can get back to the playoffs again, like that sounds good. But my argument, Eric, is that I think like the expectations should be higher for a number of reasons. I think Deshaun is one of those reasons because you made that trade for him back in 2022, anticipating that he's this quarterback that takes you to that next level and gets you to that next level. And I also think like Browns fans in a way, I mean, you know this from being around this fan base long enough, I think they sort of protect their feelings in a way because they're so used to the seasons that were bad and they weren't winning. And so they're just like, hey, I'm good with the playoffs. But Eric, for me, like, I want to ask you the question, like what you think the standard should be for the Browns. But my answer truly is like, I'm not afraid to say this team should be an AFC championship contending team, at least in this. And I understand the AFC is tough. I understand the division's tough, but that's the type of standard that I have for this team because they're super talented. And if Deshaun can channel some version of that person he was in 2020 and play really good football, and this offense is perfect for him, I'm expecting that that's the next level. I'm not just satisfied with, hey, just get back to the playoffs like you did last year. Like that should now kind of be like what that should be like a given almost for this team. I think at this point is like every year you're in contention for the playoffs. But the standard for me is like go further, get to the AFC Championship game, be a team that's in consideration for that level. What is the standard to you?
I'm with you 100%. I mean, like you said, Browns fans do protect their feelings. They're a little pessimistic, so they're not sad if it doesn't happen. But I think it's, for starters, they should be talking about winning the division. There's an opportunity. I mean, it's the best division in the league, but at the same time, they're one of the best teams in the league. So they shouldn't be talking about, okay, just give it to the Ravens or say Cincinnati. We've proven that we can beat both of those teams in the last couple of years. So I think we're getting better in the division. I think this is a team, like you said, with all the players, the coaching, that can move forward, can win the division. Like you said, win a playoff game and possibly be in the AFC Championship. That's all you want to do is get in the tournament. You get in the tournament and you give yourself a chance. And with this roster, and hopefully the defense travels, and hopefully they don't have to actually travel, we can play at home, then it makes it a lot easier for these guys. And so I think that it's about getting a fast start, going out there, winning football games you're supposed to win, and win one or two that you're not supposed to win, and sitting in the driver's seat.
I like that. I like raising the bar to at least win the division, considering that we know, Eric, last time this team won the division, you know this all too well. It was your rookie year. That was the last time, 1989. That's crazy. That's crazy. You know, these people, these fans don't know what that. Well, I shouldn't say not all obvious fans from that era, but a lot of these fans, these young fans, like they don't know what that's like. You know exactly what that's like.
I know what it's like, and I know what it felt like, and I know these people will go crazy if it happens. And so, right now, everyone shouldn't set the bar low. That should be something that we're thriving for, to win the division, because we won a home game in Cleveland. We haven't had a playoff game. We went the last 2 times we went to the playoffs, we were still on the road.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just imagine a playoff game in Cleveland.
Hasn't happened at that stadium.
Right.
Hasn't happened at that stadium. It would be something special. I agree with you. And I like that kind of being the next level for you to maybe raise the bar to. And I think too, Eric, like given how tough the schedule is this year, given how tough this division is this year, I think that would be a hell of a statement if they can come out and win the division and say like, hey, maybe you sweep the Steelers and the Bengals this year and you split with the Ravens, whatever it looks like. Like if you come out on top in this division, that is definitely a statement that like you've taken that next step where you're not just the little brother to the Ravens and the Steelers anymore. You have now ascended to that level. So I like that as another sort of element to what the standard should be for this team. I think that's a good thought by you.
Yeah, I feel good about it. I mean, these guys they're adults now. You know, when Miles, these guys first got there, they were young, didn't have any leadership, but now they have leadership. They've been together. Like you said, the standards should be higher. They know what they're doing as a team right now. They know that they can play good football. They know that they can beat the Ravens. They beat the 49ers who went to the Super Bowl last year. You know, they can play with these guys. Now it's about going out there and settling it in between the white lines. And I think these guys can have the team and the coaching staff to do it.
You're listening to the Dog Check Podcast, part of the Believe Network of podcasts, and obviously we're airing weekly on Bally Sports Cleveland. Appreciate you guys stopping on by as we get you ready for week 1 of the NFL season. Browns and Cowboys, afternoon kickoff, 4:25. We're all getting excited for it, obviously getting excited for the start of the NFL season. Another thing we're excited for, Eric, at some point here in the coming weeks is going to be the return of Nick Chubb. We know he's starting the season on the PUP list, which means he has to miss at least the first 4 games. What is as we talk about expectations and different things, how involved are you expecting him to be in the offense once he is back out there? Because you mentioned like you think that running the football should still be a staple of this team. We'll see what that looks like in the early weeks without him out there. But once he's back, we know how good Nick Chubb can be. So how involved do you think he will be in this offense once he's back out there?
I think he'll be involved. I mean, I'm sure they'll limit his touches just because they're looking forward to the playoff run. And so I would rather, even if he's ready in week 5, I'd rather he have fewer carries then and more carries at the end of the season when it really matters. And so I think that's how they'll think about it in that respect. But I feel like Nick Chubb's been a dominant guy. He's been a workhorse. He'll work hard to be ready. And so when it's all said and done, he'll be ready to play football. It's just a matter, like you said, how much they use him. And I don't really care if they use him, if they don't need him in the regular season. I need him to be ready for the playoff run and win the division like we just talked about.
Along the lines of Nick Chubb and the guys blocking in front of him that create holes for him, I mentioned training camp's been a little bit of a slog in terms of the offensive line and the progress they've made. And there's been some concerns there, especially at left tackle where they've had a bunch of injuries this preseason. And we know Jedrick Wills is part of the active roster, but not yet practicing with the team to this point. Jack Conklin is practicing with the team. And all signs point to, Eric, Jack Conklin being starting left tackle for this team on Sunday against Dallas. Now, I know there's certainly been some inconsistencies for Jedrick Wills at this point in his career, these first 4 years. He's entering year 5. It's a contract year. He's got a lot to prove. But if they go out and if Jack Conklin, who hasn't played left tackle since college, by the way, but he does have some experience there, if he plays well at left tackle here in week 1, and let's just say, like, hypothetically, like Jedrick Wills could be back week 2, week 3, something like that, but he's playing well. Do you think there's a scenario where they just stick with Jack Conklin at left tackle and Jedrick Wills kind of becomes like your swing guy after that?
See, I'm not even going to lie. At the end of last season, in my mind, that was how it was going to work out.
you had the crystal ball. You saw this coming already.
On the left side, the one on the right. That's how I saw it. You know, that's what I was seeing as like our best opportunity as far as the line is concerned. And so, you know, if Jack Conklin moves to left and it's going well, I think it's going to be hard for Jedrick to get back in there.
Yeah, it's that's going to be fascinating to watch play out because we know DeJuan kind of represents the future for this team on the right side, and there's been some ups and downs for Jedrick Wills, but Conklin's obviously got the massive contract, and so they kind of it's hard for them to get out of it right now. So if you're going to utilize him and he's going to do a fine job on the left side, it kind of makes some sense. We'll see how that sort of plays out on Saturday. It'll be a tough test no matter who is trying to block. Obviously, Micah Parsons, whether it's DeJuan, whether it's him. But that'll certainly show us a lot about how those guys are ready to go here in week one. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball because I always like to say defenses in football are kind of like bullpens in baseball, where year to year it can just be so different. Like your bullpen could be great in baseball one year, like the Guardians this year, their bullpen is fantastic. But next year, there's no guarantee that those guys are going to be it's the same dominance that they were this year. And I kind of feel the same way about defenses in the NFL. Like one year they can be great, and then the next year they maybe take a step back. Now, the one thing I'll say about the Browns, Jim Schwartz generally is kind of a model of consistency with his groups. They usually come out, and even if they're not exactly the same or exactly as good, they still generally are up there in like the top 10, top 5 competing for those, those top marks and things. Just, do you think this defense has a chance? Because we've heard a lot about Myles Garrett trying to even improve upon last year when he wins Defensive Player of the Year, as hard as that might be. Do you think there's a chance this defense is actually better this year than they were last year, year two of Jim Schwartz's system?
I think they're better as players and within the scheme. You know, a lot of times we don't think about the fact that from year to year, let's say the defense was great last year, but this year they play more explosive offenses.
Yeah, that's very true.
So that changes how the defense or the numbers actually look, right? And so they could play good football and still give up, 300 yards to say a Miami Dolphins team who was very explosive, but win the game and people like their defense isn't playing well. Well, they're having to shut down teams that are a lot more explosive this year. So, I think numbers-wise, it probably won't look the same. But I think going out there scheme-wise and actually playing the games, they'll be a very good defense.
Yeah, I do. I think, too, like Jim Schwartz has talked a lot about just the wrinkles he's trying to add, disguising things a little bit more. Like last year, I think it was a lot of let's just go out and play what we're going to play. It was we're going to sort of show you pre-snap everything, and we'll roll with it. And they've worked hard, I think, this offseason to implement some new looks, some new things. And I'm excited to see what that side of the ball obviously looks like as well. Is there a player, Eric, and it can be on either side of the ball, offense, defense, whatever, maybe even special teams, that you think is kind of like an X factor, like a guy that needs to have a good season, aside from the obvious one like Deshaun? I think we all know Deshaun. A lot of the season hinges on Deshaun. But is there a guy that you kind of have your eye on that's like that you're like, if this guy has a big year, I think it's going to mean really good things to the Browns. Maybe they make a deep playoff run. Maybe they make it to the Super Bowl, whatever. Like, who's the guy that you got your eye on in that regard that kind of changes the math a little bit for this team and takes them to that next level?
For me, I'm going to go out there on a limb. And it's not because the guy isn't good. I just want Jordan Hicks to be that guy. I mean, we know the defense is good. In years past, we've had a great front four. Obviously, we've had DBs back there, and we had JOK doing his thing. But from the middle standpoint, we haven't had that guy who's just a straight run stopper, who's been able and also been able to cover running backs. And so I think Jordan Hicks can be that guy who, gives us that little edge. I mean, we had Anthony last year, but he was always hurt and didn't play that much. And so I think Jordan Hicks is a guy that I'm really looking forward to be the quarterback of that defense, get everybody where they need to be lined up, and go make plays, especially in the run game.
How excited are you, Eric, to see, especially given how you served as a kick returner during your career, to see this new kickoff rule? Are you expecting it to be sort of the game-changing play that it's been advertised and make that something that's exciting for fans again?
I think it will be. I mean, I think teams now, if they are bold enough, can put some of their best players back there because the hits are limited. So if you can get a crease and make a guy miss, you can get after it. And so I would love to play in this game. I didn't really return kicks that much towards the end of my career, but if I could return them in this scheme, get a head on a hat and make a guy miss, and let's race, I'd feel good about it as a return team.
You think you got a couple returns in you? Can you go out there for a couple more with the Browns, maybe?
I think I can field it.
You'll just call for a fair catch. I'm just going to fair catch it. Well, honestly, Eric, along those lines, this came up while you were in Paris, but I know there was obviously the Hall of Fame game. Devin Hester got in this year. That's a big deal. On a personal level, I want to know what that means to you because I think Devin, and I meant to look this up, and it slipped my mind till this very moment. I think Devin mentioned your name as somebody who like should be in consideration for the Hall of Fame in a similar sort of category like he's getting in for the kick return accolades that you obviously had throughout your career. And I think that's awesome that like the guy who's kind of bearing that cross to get into the Hall of Fame, kind of blazing that path for a specialty type role is mentioning you, but obviously others as well that should potentially be considered for this. Just what does it mean to you to see somebody like Devin Hester get in, knowing that was obviously part of your career at a point in time as well?
It makes me feel good. I mean, like you say, he mentioned others should probably be in. I don't know that me or anybody else will ever get in, but at the same time, when there's talk about it, people get to think about it. And so, you know, I had records in the NFL before Devin broke them, and also scored touchdowns on offense. So it's just something that you got to be excited about. There's someone who that's all they really did is in the Hall of Fame. So it gives everybody else a chance because when you talk about the Devin Hesters, the Josh Cribbs, the Brian Mitchells, myself, we're guys who actually won games or helped our teams win games through returning punts or kicks. And there's no way you can diminish that. Right. Even though the Browns didn't win many games when Josh was playing, he gave them an opportunity to be in the game. Right. And so players like this are changing the game. And you notice when they were kicking the ball in the end zone or skying it in the punt game and guys aren't getting many returns, that the game has changed. But when you have somebody who's dynamic and special who can return the ball, get you 3 or 4 first downs on the return. Doesn't always have to be a touchdown. They can get first downs for your offense and shorten the field or even take it to the house. You got to respect that.
Yeah, it's also fascinating, man, because with this new kickoff, we're all hoping that kind of revives that role and makes that prominent again. But if that doesn't happen, if this kind of just becomes something where it's not the game-changing play that many are saying, then it almost is like, you know, Devin Hester and some others are kind of like the last of a dying breed, if you will, of guys like yourself that return kicks and did it at a high level. And so it's kind of, it's just weird. It's because I grew up watching, you know, guys be able to do that at such a level, and it was impressive. And you felt like it was an important part of the game. And there was always the line about like, hey, special teams matter too. And you saw that in those moments, and it's crazy, but hopefully that's what happens with this new kickoff rule. And we're talking about other guys having opportunities to get in. Did you have aside from yourself, did you have a guy that you like loved the most as a kick returner since your playing days that you like really admired and liked watching his game?
Dante Hall.
That's a good one. He was special, Hall. Man.
And I'm gonna tell you, returners are different. Everybody's different in the position they play. But Dante Hall, I look at him as we didn't play the same, but similar because we made guys miss. I like guys who make guys miss and not just one cut. We have a big hole, you run, and you score a touchdown. I like to see people make highlights and put people on their highlight films. And so Dante was a guy that I could watch like, ooh, he shook him. And even if he didn't do it, he shook it. I like to see that kind of stuff.
He was shifty. Yeah, he was something. I remember watching Dante Hall growing up. All right, Eric, we'll get out of here with this. I want you to give me a record prediction for the Browns for this year. Just kind of off rip here. You don't have to go game by game or anything like that unless you really want to. But I want to get a sense of where your head's at. Let's get the fans excited for this season with Eric Metcalf's prediction for the Browns record this year.
Man, when I do this, I have a number, but then I also have to be realistic.
It's okay. You don't have to say 17-0. We all want that.
But I really feel good. I feel good about 11-6.
I like that. Hey, I was gonna follow it up with mine. Not to make for a boring sort of end of the show here, but I was gonna say 11-6 too. I did on another show I work on. I did like the game by game, went through the whole schedule, and I ended on 11-6. And I was like, all right, that's it. It's 11-6 then. So, all right, we're in this together. If
I would have went with my heart, I would definitely say 12-5. And so the
real just one more loss.
Really had to take one away.
Just one more loss. I like that. Yeah, we're in this together. If the season's a disaster and people want to aggregate this later and come back at us, hey, it's me too. It's not just Eric. I know Eric's the more notable name here, but I got your back on this. We both are saying 11-6 here today.
And all we can say is we didn't play.
Maybe if Eric would have played, they would have won more games. Exactly. Eric, I'm excited that we're going to be connecting each week on this show. Excited to have you back. I'm excited that football's back, and I know we're going to have some fun this season, man. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for joining me this week, and I'm looking forward to talking some more down the line.
Yes, sir. Go Browns.
Appreciate you guys listening. As always, just a follow-up. We are working on having multiple shows a week. Second show really geared around you guys, the fans, where I'm going to try to do a mailbag, get your guys' questions, answer different things, have some fun with it. For now, be sure to hit us up in the YouTube comments or wherever you get your podcast. So some of the thoughts that you might have. And we will have a second show for you at some point here coming down the pike. I also think I'm making some rounds on the Cowboys Believe Network podcast. So a lot of good stuff coming down the pike here as we get ready for the start of the season. Browns and Cowboys Sunday, 4:25. You guys know that already, but we're excited, and we'll obviously have a lot of follow-up reaction for you next week as well. Keep on following the Dog Check podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Believe Network of podcasts, and of course, airing weekly on Bally Sports Cleveland. Until next time, we appreciate you, and go Browns.